All right, here we go. So back to Central American Shortcut. By the way, I'm not trying to talk too fast or too slow. So I know some people said I was going a little fast. Um, I don't want to go too slow either, where you got to listen to me for like an hour and a half. So I'm trying to balance that. I'm also trying to make sure that I tell you when we're going on to a new category because I knew that before some people had said that I was even missing that. It's just different than talking to you in class. Because normally I ask, hey, does anybody have questions? So, all right. So Central American shortcut. Know that basically looking for a Northwest Passage, and then the idea of yeah, we're going to go ahead and do it. So actually, at first, where they looked at was in Nicaragua. They found an area they were going to use, but they decided to use Panama. Okay. The French had actually started building it in like the 1880s, and they had thousands of people die because of the construction, also because of yellow fever and malaria had more of an effect than the actual construction. So Roosevelt took on this task. Okay, Roosevelt took this on this task. So look at the next page where it says the Panama Canal. Basically, that's what I want you to know is Roosevelt took this upon himself that the U.S. will lead the way and build this canal. The problem was Panama was not an independent country at the time. The Panamanians were actually ruled by Colombia. Panama was part of Colombia. Um, but those people in Panama wanted to basically have their independence. So Roosevelt sent some troops and some ships down there and said, okay, we're going to help you with your independence. Well, Colombia was not going to go to war with the United States. So we kind of annexed them, made them a territory, but not really. We just controlled what is called the canal zone. So construction began on the canal. So under building the canal, um, it might sound easy, but it's not. It was one of the largest engineering feats still to this day to cut through to join. Basically, you understand the canal joins the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, so it's a shortcut for ships. It saves 7,000 miles of travel by ship around South America. All right, around South America. So, building the canal took thousands of workers. One of the things they learned is they had to basically kill off the mosquito population, so you didn't have so many people that got sick. It was run by American companies, but employed a lot of Panamanians. And recently, I don't remember, it's last summer or this spring, they finished dredging out the canal and making it wider just because the newer ships are wider and bigger and they couldn't fit through the canal. So actually, when the canal was first built, eventually it became obsolete because like our warships could not fit through the canal, and that was a key thing for Roosevelt too. He wanted our warships to be able to get from the Pacific to the Atlantic or the Atlantic to the Pacific. Now that all changed once our ships became too large, and then we had two fleets. Anyways, we have a Pacific fleet based in Hawaii, and then we have an Atlantic fleet that's actually based in Norfolk, Virginia. So, anyways, canal took 12 years to build, and it was finished in. Let me give you. I think it's 1912. 1912. Hang on, sorry, forgetting some of my facts that I normally would know. Oh, I'm sorry, 1914. 1914, and it said your first ship made its way through, and it's actually a 48-mile voyage. So going 48 miles to cut across versus 7,000 miles around. Okay. All right, let's hop on over to lesson two, which is basically what we're going to be talking about is World War One. So what I want you to know on the world at war, know that what I want you to write for that is European nations, European nations, okay, were still ruled by royals, and in Europe at the time, it was still how would I say it? Like tenuous situation. The European, let's put it this way: the European nations at that time did not trust one another, but they had had hundreds of years of wars. But write that down: European nations, they didn't trust each other. All right. So the reason the war actually begins, so you're on the next part, and you see on this, I wrote down Maine, Main on there. And I always want my students to know this as to why this war started is use that acronym Maine. Okay? It's an easy way to remember why World War One started. The M stands for militarism. 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 And here's what militarism means: building up one's army. That's it. Building up one's army. Now, the problem was the other nations were doing that too. What did I say? They didn't trust each other. They didn't really work together. Okay, you had different royals competing, different rulers competing for power in Europe. So let me explain militarism really easily. Germany, France, not allies, right? Germany makes 10 tanks. How many tanks is France going to make? Well, then they're going to make 10 tanks. But instead of 10, we got to be better than Germany, so we're going to go ahead and build 12 tanks. And then Germany says, "Oh, you have 12 tanks. We're going to build 20." And France says, "Oh, you built 20. We're going to build 30." Okay. Now we're not talking about that small of numbers. We're talking about in the hundreds, right? Or also not even tanks, but just new war technology. So that wasn't just going on in France and Germany. This is going on throughout Europe. So we understand. So all these armies are being built up, built up, built up, built up. All right. So, and I'm going to get to why they eventually use them. So okay, A on Maine is alliances. Okay? And I know you guys know what that term means. Alliance means if I'm allied with this country, if they're attacked, what do I have to do now? I'm going to go defend them. If I'm attacked, what do? They're going to have to defend me. So what happened in Europe at the time under the alliance system is you had this nation attack this nation, so then this nation became involved in this nation and this nation. It's really like a domino effect. Um, and if we were in class, I'd actually show you. I have a really good graphic that I use on the board to show you how all these nations become involved. All right, but that is another cause. I is imperialism. Imperialism, the way you define that, here's what I want you to write down, is extending a nation's borders. Extending a nation's borders. In this case, it was usually by force. Extending a nation's borders, usually by force. Write that down. And then the last one is N for nationalism. And what nationalism is how good way is extra. Okay, so we all know what patriotism is, right? Nationalism is off the rails. Patriotism, all right? Like we are so, and really, you look at it, it's like a pride in one's country, but it's like over the top pride in one's country, and it's also the belief that our nation and our group and our country were better than everyone. So that was another cause. Okay. But that's what Maine, where it says the war begins in Maine, those are the causes of World War One. That's what I want you to know for that. Where it says the war begins Maine, those four examples I gave you. Those are what caused World War One. Now, those had all been underlying, and then there was one key event that really started those in motion. Okay, kicked all those off. And so right down back under nationalism down below there, what I want you to know, World War One started when you had Archduke Franz Ferdinand assassinated. Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated, and his wife too, Sophie. So let me explain that real quick. You don't need to write all this down, but so you understand it. And then this goes kind of into the next part too. It goes in the next part with Allied and Central Powers as well. So Franz Ferdinand was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which is not around anymore. Um, They had annexed Bosnia, which is in modern day the Balkan region of Europe. The Serbians were upset that Bosnia was annexed. Serbia was an ally with Russia. Okay, um, Germany was an ally with the Ottoman Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Well, with Russia, you had also England and France were also allies. So what happened? Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated by Serbians. Okay, so basically, Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia. Is everybody with me so far? Archduke Franz Ferdinand assassinated. Um, Austria declares war on Serbia. Well, who's Serbia's ally? Russia. So then Russia declares war on Austria-Hungary. Well, who's their ally? Germany. Germany declares war on Serbia and Russia. And then, because Germany does that, France declares war on Germany and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And then the Ottoman Empire, which is modern day Turkey, was also an ally of Germany. So now they come to Germany's and Austria-Hungary's defense. And then Great Britain says, "Oh yeah, we're allies with Russia, so we got to defend them as well." So the war starts. That's how the war started. Okay. And what's interesting, if you look at the history of this, a lot of these, so the royals, like the king was in charge of England, the czar who was in charge of Russia, the Austro-Hungarian Empire. They were all loosely related. Okay, but what did they think? Well, our country's the best. We're going to be fine. Okay, we're going to be fine. We're going to come after you. You're going to come after us. Most people didn't think it was going to be a very long war. Okay, so go to Allied powers and Central powers. The Allied powers, like I just said, Russia, Great Britain, um, the U.S. eventually, you know that they were France and Serbia. This hat's making a weird shadow in it. I need to adjust that, or just my lighting, or not wear a hat, because then of course my hair is real cool right now in the quarantine, right? Anyways, am I off track? Yes. So that's the Allied powers, Central powers: Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, um, Germany, and the Ottoman Empire were your four major players. So they start out and they go to war. Okay, boom, World War One starts, which led to millions of lives being lost, and it probably could have almost been prevented if they would have all taken some deep breaths here. So fighting at sea, Germany controlled the sea. A new technology at the time were submarines. The German submarines were called U-boats. Also, you didn't have aircraft carriers yet. Okay, that came in World War II. Also, at the time, you had large battleships being made. So, a lot of battles fought at sea to try to control trade routes. And the U.S. was trading supposedly with everybody, but mostly with England. Okay, so we were not in the war yet. Okay, like I said, the war started in 1914. Um, the war was given the nickname the Great War. Okay, when it was going on and when it ended, it was not called World War One at the time. Everybody understand that? They didn't say, "Oh, we're fighting World War One. There's going to be another one." How they didn't know that? They didn't call World War One until later. All right. So that's just something to understand as well. So in 1918, we enter the war. Eventually, there's two reasons we enter the war, and I want you to put this down. Two reasons. One is the sinking of the Lusitania, which is Lusitania. Lusitania was a U.S. ship, supposedly a passenger ship bringing people to England. Um, but the Germans at that time were sinking everything because they were accusing us of bringing supplies. So they sank the Lusitania. Another thing that happened was you had the second thing that led us to enter the war was called the Zimmerman Note, like Olivia Zimmerman's last name. So George Zimmerman was a German diplomat to Mexico. Basically, he talked to Mexico and said, "Hey, Mexico, why don't you join us and when the U.S. is getting ready to come to Europe to fight us, and we're fighting them in Europe, we want you to go ahead and attack them too from here. And when the war's over, we're going to give you back all the lands you lost in the U.S. U.S. Mexican War, okay, or what we just call the Mexican War. And so that letter was intercepted. Okay, that telegraph was intercepted. That Germany was trying to entice Mexico to fight us. So those are the two reasons we entered the war. Okay, Woodrow Wilson was the president at the time, and eventually we declared war after that. All right, let's stop there and go to the next one.